Welcome back, guys. This is the third week for IC Tune drum class. I know some of you are going to school through online classes, and some of you are maybe having a little easier time than before. But whatever time that you are spending now, let's try to focus on practicing instruments as well, so that we can praise God and glorify God through the talents that God has given us. Okay, so we're gonna start this week's lesson from now. First off, we're gonna start with the assignment that I gave you last week. It's about both rhythm, 양손 practice. I'm going to play once for each without stopping. Okay, so you can compare yourselves while I'm playing and see if you're doing right or wrong and how to play correctly. Okay, so I'm going to show you once with the count. 1, 2, 3, 4. As you saw, speed or tempo is not important. Okay, you can play slower than this, you can play faster than this, but more than tempo, I want you to focus on how correctly you're playing all this rhythm. Okay, that's the main focus of this exercise. So as I'm checking either your video or while we are doing the video chat, I'm going to check how you play and give you some advices if you need. Before we start playing drum, we are going to learn how to count. I know that this kind of theory could make you bored and it's hard to go through, but this will help you to play a fun thing later. Okay, so please listen to this theory. Okay, so again, we are going to learn how to count the rhythm. Okay, so if you look at the first line, the meter is 4/4, and it is consisting of quarter notes only. So each measure has 4 quarter notes. So you are going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. But not all the songs are made out of quarter notes. Some songs have eighth notes, and some songs might have 16th notes, and some songs might have other notes that we are not familiar of. Okay? For example, second line we have full of 8 notes, and how are you going to count? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers, yes, but the notes in between 1 and 2, note in between 2 and 3, the note in between 3 and 4. How would you count those beats? We are going to use and as the beat in between numbers. So let's say there are a beat in between number 1 and number 2, then you are going to call it and. There are beat number between 2 and 3, you are going to call it and again. So if you count 8 beats, it's going to be counted like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. It's important to know that and beat, because without and beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, those beats will lose its length. Even though it's eighth note, you might think, oh, it could be quarter note because there is no and. So it's important for you to count those and notes. How about the last line? You can see there are a lot of circles filled with black color, right? Those are 16th notes. 16th notes meaning that in one measure of 4/4, there are 16 notes that can be in that one measure. Okay, so we already know 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. How would you count the notes in between 1 and? How about and 2? We are going to put syllables I and A, which will be sound like E and A. So if you look at those, it's going to be counted like 1E and A, and 2E and A, 3E and A, 4E and A. So if you keep counting continuously, it's going to be 1E and the 2E and the 3E and the 4E and the. It's very important for you to remember these things. Now we're going to use the counting to play actual drum. But before I start off, I want to explain to you something, okay? So as you play drum, you might hear a word such like 4 beat or 8 beat or 16 beat, okay? What that means is that simply in 4/4 measure, in one measure, how many times your right hand is hitting the highest symbol. So let's say somebody is saying, oh, you need to play 8 beat, then that means that you are going to play a rhythm that your right hand plays hi-hat 8 times in a measure. Whatever that your bass or snare drum playing, it doesn't matter as long as you're playing 8 times with your right hand. Okay, that's what 8 beat means. Okay, so I'm going to show you the basic rhythm on 8 beat once and play slowly once, and then going to explain to you how you play. Okay, so here's the rhythm: 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to play slower. 1, 2, 3, 4. So for your hands, your right hand is playing 8 times. So if I count it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and your left hand is playing a 2 and 4, beat 2 and beat 4. So it's going to be like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. As you see, right hand doesn't change what is played, but left hand is only playing a 2 and 4 for the basic rhythm. And for the bass drum, it only plays for first and third count, 1 and 3. Okay, so if I combine all three, it's going to sound like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, this is the basic rhythm of 8 beat. If you have done the basic 8 beat rhythm, then we are going to switch a little bit of the rhythm so that it will be more interesting. If you are playing the same rhythm over and over, people who are listening to your drum, and also yourself who is playing drum, both of you and the listeners would be bored of the same rhythm, keep repeating. Okay, so we have to change our rhythm a little bit by measure, so that it will not sound the same. Okay, so there are 3 ways of changing the rhythm. Okay, first one is that you are playing more of bass drum, so the rhythm will be different. And second way is that you're playing more of snare drum, so that the rhythm will be different as well. Third way is playing bass and snare more than the basic rhythm, so that it will make a new combination for both, so that it will different. Okay, I'm going to show you the first variation of 8 beat. Okay, so we are going to add bass drum one more time than what you've been playing. Okay, so we are going to play bass drum at count 1, and we are going to play bass drum at count at end of 2, and also we're going to play bass drum at count 3. So if I show you only by right hand and right foot at the same time, it's going to be like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 at this, you are going to add your left hand at 2 and 4. So it's going to sound like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 The second variation of 8-beat rhythm that we're gonna learn today is putting bass drum at count 1, 3, and end of 3. So if I play right hand and right foot at the same time, it's going to be sounding like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. If I add snare at 2 and 4, it's going to sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You might have heard this for a long time throughout many songs, but this is one of the rhythms that we learn. Okay. Third variation that we are going to learn is a little more tricky. Okay, since for the first and second variation we have played bass drum for right next to each other, except the first one. But this one you have to make a gap in between second and third bass drum. So this one you are going to play bass drum at count 1, end of 2, and end of 3. So I'm going to show you again with right hand and right foot first. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. If I add snare at 2 and 4, it's going to sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. We talked about counting, and to be honest, because of counting, it could be more tricky for you to play. Okay, but when you think about the rhythm itself, it's not actually that hard. Okay, so without counting, I'm going to play rhythm for you, and you figure out what rhythm this is. Okay. So this is a second variation of 8-beat that we just learned. Okay, but think about the sound except the counting. Okay, so if you think about the sound of bass drum and snare drum, it sounds like this: 쿵, 따, 쿵, 쿵, 따, 쿵, 따, 쿵, 쿵, 따. Okay, even though it sounds very tricky when you count, and you have to think hard when you are playing bass drum, but when you think about the sound itself, you can just put the bass and snare in the right place, because your right hand is keep playing 8-beat. It doesn't matter what you're playing, but your right hand is staying the same. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So at this rhythm, you are just going to put in bass and snare at the right time. Think about the rhythm. 쿵, 따, 쿵, 쿵, 따. 쿵, 따, 쿵, 따, 쿵, 따, 쿵, 따. And also, third variation at the same time, if I just play the sound of bass and snare, it sounds like this. 쿵, 따, 쿵, 쿵, 따, 쿵, 따, 쿵, 쿵, 따. So if you play this at drum, it sounds like this. It's important to know how to count, because when you listen to rhythm, some people actually like to calculate. When they hear, they like to think about the counting, and they would like to figure out in what counts they are playing. But if you are better at playing this way, for example, listening to the sound and just imitating the sound, that's fine. Okay? Important thing again is that you have to know both ways to play. You have to be able to count, but you also have to be listen to the rhythm and play like this. Okay? For the first variation, it's used a lot of time for slow songs. For the third variation, it used a lot of time for the fast songs. So if you play that both rhythms a lot of times, you are going to be able to play drum very well when you are encountering those fast and slow songs. But whatever variation it is or whatever rhythm it is, you have to be able to play at all times. So I suggest you to practice all three rhythms for the same amount of time. This is it for today's lesson. I know that it could look a little easier for some of you, and it could be looking a little harder for some of you as well. But at the same time, this is a very basic rhythm that everybody should know. Okay, this is the most useful rhythm that you are going to use for a lot of times as you're playing drums. So please try to keep practice and also imagine that you're playing this so that you will be able to use it freely whenever that you have to use it. Okay. Stay safe and stay healthy. I'm going to see you next week. Thank you.